now, actually, I just want to feel...
No, sorry. I'm not reopening doors that were already closed. Like, you had your chance there and then.
What?
You've never had the go-to best friend.
No. And I've never wanted a go-to best friend. It's the neediness. I don't like it.
Why do you perceive it as neediness and not having needs?
If you feel rejected because I left you on red, I mean, I think it's a bit much.
To you?
Yeah.
If you have a friend
It is a
and
bit
your
much.
friend is upset...
Then they're not my friend because they don't know me.
Push comes to shove, if it's a decision between a best friend and a boyfriend, usually the boyfriend wins.
You think that's wrong? Michelle, you cannot compare romantic relationships to friendships.
But what?
There's a difference.
Are you actually saying if your friend is upset, you would not care?
Heartbreak is one of the hardest things to deal with. And today I'm putting that pain under the microscope as I challenge Michelle Elman, widely known as the Queen of Boundaries, author of multiple best-selling guides on personal growth, and most recently, Bad Friend. Her deep dive into why friendship breakups hurt so much and how to heal and move on. Throughout this episode, Michelle and I will be debating whether the sting of losing a friend can actually cut as deep as a romantic split. We've all been wired to see romantic heartbreak as the ultimate loss, while treating friendship breakups like just drama. Now, I want to say, I'm playing devil's advocate to everything she's saying. I don't believe everything that I'm arguing for, but I'm really trying to give a different perspective in this episode. Her thesis that when a friend walks away, the rupture can shake our very identity, leaving scars that often don't heal because we don't pay proper attention to them. Will she convince me? Well, by the end of this episode, you'll know my answer, and I'd love to hear if she changes your mind too. But first, a quick ask, because only 20% of you who tune into this podcast every week have actually hit subscribe. So if you found value in these conversations, subscribing just takes a second, it's totally free, and it helps me bring on more world-class experts on the show so that we can grow and learn together. I really, really hope you enjoy this episode. We are super feisty, super fun at times, but I really wanted to bring a more nuanced and debatey style to this episode just because me and Michelle are friends. I'm so excited for you guys to hear this episode. Let's get into it. Michelle, welcome back to Millennial Mind.
Thanks for having me back. I never get to go on a podcast twice.
I love it. And I'm having you back because you very kindly asked me to endorse your amazing book, Bad Friend. And last time when you came on the podcast, you taught me and everyone else so much around how to set boundaries. But today we are going to do something a little bit different because whilst I do love your book, I just want to emphasize that there are a couple of things I disagree with.
That's fine. We can battle it out.
Yeah. Welcome to the battle. And I think that, you know, one of the reasons I actually want to give a different perspective today is because I did resonate with so much of what you say, but I think so many of us have been taught something totally different.
Yeah. So you know what ties with the boundaries conversation with the friendship breakup conversation is one of my favorite boundaries is you're allowed to think that.
Yeah.
So you're allowed to disagree.
Right. And you actually say that in the introduction of the book. You know, you're not going to agree on every single page. Just take the bits that work for you because we are all very different. And I really actually like the fact that you said that at the start. I want to start with one of your quotes in the book. Society has a hierarchy of grief. We empathize more with a person who has lost a husband than the person who has lost a boyfriend. We give people more understanding when they are going through a divorce, more than a romantic breakup, and friendship sits lowest on the totem pole of deserved grief.
Yes.
What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that is that it has no context and it has no nuance. So a husband of 1 year, you are meant to grieve more than a boyfriend of 9 years. Because of that label. A fiancé is more important, but you don't know whether it's been a 3-month engagement versus a best friend of 20 years. You don't know any of that context when you're comparing it, but because of the label itself, it's already being ranked in importance rather than actually looking at the individual relationship. So a guy I've dated for 2 months, I would call that a boyfriend breakup, and a friendship breakup of 20 years. Of course, the friendship breakup is more devastating because that person's been in your life longer, the significance is greater, and also the projected future that you shared together. When you have a friend in your life for 20 years, that's imagining your wedding together, imagining them as the godmother of your children. Having a boyfriend for 2 months, like, yeah, I'll get over it. And I'll get over it quite easily.
I really love, okay, I think we've got to define friendship here and what kind of friendship we're talking about, because really interesting, when I was reading the book and actually when I watched a lot of your work, I think that I've never had that with somebody, if I'm completely honest.
You've never had the go-to best friend?
No. And I've never wanted a go-to best friend. I remember when I was in school, I had a friend and we used to buy each other friendship bracelets. And you know those teddy bears, what were they called? You know those grey ones that everyone used to buy? There were these
Care Bears?
It wasn't a Care Bear. It was like a grey teddy bear. If you remember, tell me in the comments. I can't remember it now, but it was grey and it had a patch in its ear. It was really cute. And I remember, I used to really want a best friend. And I never grew up with a sister. So I always thought that having, a best friend would be really nice and whatever. But for some reason, and maybe this is like a defensive thing, I just remember in school and also at university not liking it if people get too close to me. And I would say I'm still like that now. I don't like it if someone wants to hang out with me every single day. It's a no-go for me. That is like too much.
What do you feel when someone wants to get that close to you internally?
I feel claustrophobic. And I don't want to spend all my time with you.
Is it the level of expectation they're asking of you?
No, it's the neediness. I don't like it.
Why do you perceive it as neediness and not having needs?
Why has this turned into a life coaching session?
I'll stop because I'm a life coach.
No, I love it. No, I love it. No, what did you ask me?
But why do you perceive it as neediness as opposed to having needs?
Because I don't have those needs. I don't want to call you every single day.
So again,
I don't want to know about the day.
But then it's back to expectations.
Right.
Someone expecting you more from you than you are willing to give them.
Yes.
And I think when it comes to best friend, a lot of people have insecurities not having that go-to best friend. I had those insecurities in my secondary school. I did have a go-to best friend in my primary school. And then I went to secondary school and I never really found my feet within friendship. And then when I did, I ended up going into hospital and came out and no longer had that go-to best friend. And I yearned for it because it's just so much easier in class.
Yeah.
Like when they ask you to pair up or you're going on a school trip and the seats on the bus are twos, if you don't have the go-to best friend, you're left out. And so I viewed it in my childhood as it being a personal failing of mine, that I wasn't lovable. In the same way that if you didn't have a boyfriend by a certain age in secondary school, you also weren't lovable. To not have that go-to best friend that is very much depicted in the media is seen as a flaw, a character flaw, really.
So interesting.
And I think where you might have felt quite avoidant around wanting that go-to best friend, we often have to look at our relationship with our primary caregivers of the person with the same gender. So your relationship with your mother, and I'm not going to dig into your childhood, but I feel like if you look at those relationships, or maybe your mum's relationships to her female friends, you can then start picking apart where that, I feel like there are epiphanies going on.
She is 100% like that.
Exactly.
She doesn't like to be close to people either.
So
but she is close to her sister.
Right.
They speak, so my mum and her sister speak every single day on the phone. And I always ask her, what on earth are you talking about?
So did you get taught
But I also call my mum every single day, about 6 times. We call each other so many times a day.
Right. So did you have strong messages when you were growing up about the differences between family and friends? Around like blood is thicker than water, that kind of messaging? Because it sounds like you have a very different relationship with people who you consider family, whereas to another person, you hear that language all the time.
Yes.
My friends are like my family. My best friend is like my sister.
Yes.
Whereas you didn't have that framing of family versus friends when you're younger. Whereas in my family, it was like family no matter what. So it was, and therefore friends didn't really sit as high in the priorities in my family. My dad has one best friend. My mum has one best friend. They don't have a wide circle. Therefore, I longed for that one best friend because we think about this all the time when it comes to romantic relationships of like, if someone has divorced parents or someone has an absent father, for example, then they struggle in their love life. Then you're a bit like, oh yeah, that makes sense because I had divorced parents. You never think about the examples you had around friendship and how that has an impact on your own friendships.
That's actually very valid because I've never ever thought about that. My parents are both part of very big circles and I have very big circles. I wouldn't say they have like one best friend, but I would say that I have multiple friends and multiple groups. And I would say that when I was younger though, I did have one best friend and we used to call each other every single night. And I would also just say though, that's life. You know, I don't... When I was 15 and I used to call on the house phone at 7 o'clock after school when it was free, you know, because you weren't allowed to call before then, I had nothing better to do.
Yeah.
I could speak to my friend for an hour on the phone all day. Even right now when I call my mum, it's a very quick conversation and she calls me about 55,000 times right now because of the wedding. It drives me absolutely mad. But you know, she's calling me, I'm saying, yeah, what do you want? She's putting the phone down. It's not like, hey, how are you? How's your day? What do you have for breakfast? That does not exist. And in my friendship
Interestingly,
groups,
do you have those conversations with your fiancé?
Yes. I want
And
to know
that's
what
not
he's
needy?
having for breakfast.
And that's not needy.
I would say I'm needy to him for sure.
See, this is where it's very interesting and why I want to unpick why you think that's needy if it comes from likely a woman in a friendship context, but it's not needy when it's from your fiancé.
But why should it? It's different. My relationship with my partner is obviously going to be different with my relationship with my friend.
And it can be, but it doesn't have to be.
But I want it to be.
Right, for you. And for another human, it might not be. And this is where, this goes back to what you said earlier, which is that friendship as a definition is so broad and vague.
Yes.
If I said to you, my boyfriend forgot my birthday, there's an unwritten rule of boyfriends should remember birthdays, right?
100%.
We don't have that in friendship. So what is more important to you in friendship? Someone remembering your birthday or someone picking up your phone call? The answer to that would be very different depending on different people. And because we have such a broad, vague definition, and if we include men in the conversation, it's even more vague because the number of times men are like, oh yeah, he's my friend. And it's like, when's the last time you spoke to him? And it's like 7 years ago. And they still call them their friend. That is the same word we use for someone who refers to someone like a sister.
Yes.
And yet this friend label with a lack of definition comes at a lack of values, not being on the same page, not having the reciprocation, not having expectations on the same page. All of that leads to disappointment, heartbreak, and people having hurt feelings because they have one version of friendship in their head and their friend has a completely different version.
So define a good friend to me.
I think it's different for each person. Within the book, I talk about, for me, a good friend is someone where you don't need that preface or that explanation. When I talk about the relationship with my mother, you know what the context of that. I don't need to explain myself. But to another person, I include a few examples in the book. Someone said it's like a feeling of home. And I was like, that's lovely.
Yeah.
I've never thought about that. Another person said it's shared responsibility for what's going in your life. I was like, oh, would not want that. Like, that's not my definition of friendship.
Right.
But until we actually start to examine what our definition is, we don't know why something is upsetting. And this is why in the very beginning of the introduction, I'm not trying to convince anyone to be a better friend or a good friend. I even say the book's not going to teach you how to be a good friend. What it's going to make you do is question everything about friendship, things that you have likely never thought about. And that's what my goal is like you question it. And if your ultimate decision is that I am wrong, great. That's what I want out of it. But at least you've thought about it.
One thing I really want to talk about is energy.
Yeah.
You can wear whatever clothes you want. You can have as much makeup on your face as you want. You can have your hair however you want. I will know from your energy if you are confident, if you are happy, or you're not. There is literally no amount of external stuff that you can do that will change that for me.
It was really interesting because I remember one friend saying to me, we'd been about friends for 5 years, and she said to me, you know, you're so confident. And I was like, just out of curiosity, why do you say that? And she was like, every time we talk negatively about our body, you never join in. And we had been friends for 5 years. And bearing in mind, it was something quite inactive I was doing by not contributing to a conversation. She had noticed every single time. And it's funny how, like, when people say, like, I'm really confident, and I am really confident, but it's not by me walking around and telling everyone how confident I am.
Exactly.
It's actually in the way that in the small decisions I don't even know I'm making. Do you get what I mean? And I think a lot of the times, especially when I'm dating, it's the same way. Like, I got asked on a date last week, like, are you ever worried about coming across as arrogant? And I just went, it's not arrogance if it's accurate. And I was just like, but it's true. That's what I think about myself, and that's what I believe. Like, I don't need to toot my own horn because my accomplishments speak for themselves. So I don't need to walk around with a billboard telling you every single thing I've done because it comes across in my energy.
For sure. And I think one thing that we don't pay enough attention to is energy. So even if you're in a relationship with someone, and this could be a friendship, this could be a relationship with your parents, this could be a relationship with your partner, you will feel if something is wrong if you choose to listen to it.
So this is why I advocate for breakups. Because when someone's pulling away, when a friend is distancing, you always notice.
100%.
And you know, and the disparity with ghosting in particular is I've never heard a situation where one friend is ghosting another and the person who is doing the ghosting doesn't know exactly why that is happening.
Okay, I have an example where that's happened to me.
Okay.
I had a friend, I'm going to try and not make this so obvious because there's not that many, but I had a friend, and throughout my life, I always felt that there was this, I don't want to say the word jealousy, but always putting me down every single time. Whether it was
passive-aggressive jokes.
Very passive-aggressive. You know, when I said I started doing modeling, she was like, well, everyone can do that. You know, it was very...
I honestly just felt like a kick in my heart as you said that. So I was like, it's hurtful.
Yeah, it's hurtful. And at that time, I wasn't as confident. So, you know, I remember when I was in a relationship with someone and I would talk to her about it, she'd be like, why don't you just leave? Like, what's wrong with you? You know, why do you keep complaining about it? And so, you know, there was so much of that. But we had been friends for a very long time. Very long time. And one thing about friendship is with me, I am not somebody who messages in a group chat every single day. You're going to think I'm a bad friend. I don't message in the group chat. I never reply to people's messages. All my friends are actually going for dinner tomorrow, and it's very sad I can't go because they all live in North London. So for me to get there at 8:30 or 7:30 for the dinner, I have a podcast on Friday morning. So I'm not able to go because the travel time is too long. So I'm not somebody who's very needy in my perspective of a friendship.
Can I just pause you there? I don't think you're a bad friend for that. I think you need friends in your life that are compatible to your texting style.
Agree.
And I think everyone has different requirements in terms of that.
True.
But it likely means you won't be very compatible with a person who does want to text every day.
Yeah, I'm not. But I did have I will come on to that. I did have a friend and we had to have a word about that, which was interesting. So what I was saying about this friend, right, is that we always did kind of have this like weird tension, weird energy between us. 3 years ago, I went onto her profile and I said, oh my gosh, she's unfollowed me. Right?
Yeah.
I was telling one of my friends who wasn't really good friends with her, but we all, you know, kind of knew each other. And she said, but you're not following her. And I had never realized that I was not following her because it didn't say follow back.
Yeah.
And she was like, but you're not following her either. To this day, I do not know if I unfollowed her or she unfollowed me. It is a mystery. I will never know. And I don't care enough to find out because I didn't actually want to be friends with her anyway.
So I'm guessing you're not friends anymore.
No, we're not friends. But
So-
kind of thank God. I don't really care. I don't want to be friends with you.
But also when it comes to like following and unfollowing, if you line up that behavior with the kind of person who makes passive aggressive comments, that communication style was always there.
Yeah.
And it might be, and this is with no judgment because we all have to learn and sometimes we have to learn the hard way. It might be that you were the one who was waking up in the friendship and like doing your own personal growth. But at the point that you made friends, you didn't notice those passive aggressive jabs to the same extent you did over time because you were evolving and then recognizing, oh wait, these kind of comments are not only bad energy, but they're keeping me down. They're not making me feel very good about myself. And so the kind of person who makes passive aggressive jabs is likely also the kind of person who will ghost you in the end of a friendship. And this is where people who are communication avoidant are conflict avoidant too. And what that means is that they don't want to end the friendship. And if you look back within the friendship and ask yourself, does this behavior line up with the person who I was actually friends with? More often than not, it will make sense.
So true. I mean, I think that was a lucky escape for me because I really didn't want to go into it with her. I was just like, I don't want to really go into it. So when I realized that, I thought, oh my God, did I unfollow her or did she unfollow me? But I don't really care, thank God. Just move on, move past it because it's not the first time it's happened with her. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it was more that I felt that I should stay friends with her because I've known her for so long. And this is actually when I want to talk about the sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah.
So often we stay in relationships, we keep friendships because we've seen that we've invested in them.
Yeah.
Even if they are making us unhappy, they're making us miserable, and that person is putting us down because we believe we've spent so much time in this relationship or this friendship that if I leave now, I'm going to lose out even more. And there's this amazing quote that I love. And it said, it's better to admit that you walked in the wrong room than spend your whole life stuck in one.
Yeah.
It's amazing because how many of us are stuck in the wrong room and we're too afraid to admit it?
But also, it's about staying rooted in the reality of what the friendship is today. And I think a lot of the guilt I had in ending some of my older friendships was I could write you an entire list of every single reason they had been there for me over the last 10 years. And I said to my life coach, like, how do I end a friendship like that? And she was like, right, but you're talking about something that happened 5 years ago, 7 years ago. You're not talking about things that happened last year. And if you actually go back to those moments in time, while they were being a good friend to you, were you also being a good friend to them? And I was like, yes. And she was like, right, so you should have no guilt. You've repaid all the things they did for you while you were in a friendship with them. And then the friendship changed. And trying to hold on to that potential of hope of what it used to be, it's that thing of having an old friendship is not better than having a quality friendship. And recognizing that when people change, the dynamic can also change too. But reminiscing or like romanticizing the past friendship is not going to make that past friendship the reality of what it is today.
But realistically, people do change. That's the purpose of life. Now, if we nitpick, something you just said has reminded me, like, I don't think friendships or relationships should be transactional.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't be if I was there for you, were you there for me? Because there are different points in life where people can be there for you and when they can't be there for you, right? We all have limited mental and emotional capacity, especially right now with a billion things going on in everyone's lives. But how do we really address whether we know we want to be friends with somebody or not? Because it can be a really challenging conversation, which doesn't really need to happen.
Yeah.
When you break up with a partner, the reason you're breaking up with them is so you can see somebody else, unless you've agreed you're going to be in an open relationship.
Yeah.
Why can't you just have this relationship with this person and not see them as often?
If it's mutual, that is fine. But if it's not mutual and one person was left in confusion, so the example you gave earlier, you both clearly unfollowed at some point. So it was mutual and you distanced or however it happened and you weren't seeing each other and neither of you picked up the phone to be like, hey, I miss you.
Exactly.
Like, if one person is picking up the phone being like, hey, I miss you. Do you want to hang out on Wednesday? Do you want to hang out on Friday? Hey, I've got this event. Do you want to come with me? And you're just disappearing and you're ghosting. That's not fair to that person. At some point in that friendship, you had respect for that person. That person was there for you. And that's where the communication happens. When you were speaking earlier, you said, I don't want to make a thing of it. But I think a lot of the time it's this idea we have of like full blown out war or nothing and silence, and I have to bury it under the carpet. And within the book, I say, choose the third option. You can actually say to someone, hey, you know that thing you did, it was quite hurtful. I would prefer if you didn't say things like that. Actually bringing up the smaller issues along the way, it's not one or the other. Right. So even if it is you wanting to end the friendship, you don't have to get into it. You don't have to have a long discussion about every single thing that's wrong with that person. You can just say, hey, look, I just think we're in different places in our life right now, and I've been feeling the energy's been a little bit off for a while, and I just think it's better if we spend more time apart. Like, you can have that conversation without it having to be an escalated, screaming, yelling match. And I think we don't make space for those kind of conversation within friendship. Yeah. And so that doesn't have to be a big deal. But what ends up happening is we ignore those small moments. For you, for example, it could be something as small as sending a text being like, hey, sorry, I keep missing your texts. I'm not great on my phone, but if you ever want to go for lunch, let's do that. That's a much better way for me to hang out with my friends. Or that's the way I prefer to hang out with my friends. Having that conversation rather than someone feeling rejected or left on red or all of these things because you're a bad texter and it's not personal.
Like, is that my responsibility? I mean, if you feel rejected because I left you on red, I mean, I think it's a bit much.
To you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to you, like if you have a friend and your friend is upset,
then they're not my friend because they don't know me.
If your friend is upset,
if my close, I would say if I have a friend who is upset that I left their message on red, they're clearly not my mate. They're like an acquaintance because they should know me.
Okay.
And everybody who's close to me knows me that I do sometimes miss messages.
Right. And also, there are things that are going to matter to you about friendship, where if a friend didn't show up, let's say for you, it's hypothetically your birthday. Yes. If someone didn't show up to your birthday, you would be upset. And if your friend was like, well, you should know me, isn't that quite a defensive approach? If your friend
fair enough.
If your friend is upset,
no, but actually, no, it's not. Actually, no, it's not.
Okay, so you know what? This will make it more relatable for you. Yeah. If your if your fiance was upset, would you care?
Michelle, you cannot compare romantic relationships to friendships. They are totally...
If your mum was upset. If your mum was upset...
But she's my mother.
Right. And also...
Not my mate.
But But what?
There's a difference.
Are you actually saying if your friend is upset, you would not care?
No. I think you misunderstood me. A friend, I'm saying if somebody I know was upset who left on red, sorry.
I'm your friend. I'm one of your closest friends. And I send you a text.
If you're one of my closest friends and you said you were really upset, and that actually did happen, actually. That did happen. And I said, I'm so sorry. I did apologize.
This is what I mean.
Yes,
so
sorry.
I send you a text and I'm like, hey, look, text might not be important to you, but I've noticed that you're not replying to a lot of my messages. Did I do something wrong? Or is this something that you like? But personally for me, I don't love it when you're not replying to my messages, and I really need you to either at least acknowledge what I've sent.
I think that's totally fair. I think the interpretation I had before is like, if a friend, but I'm like, well, they wouldn't be my friend because they wouldn't say that. If they knew, they wouldn't take offense. They might say it's upsetting me. They might say it's upsetting me, but they wouldn't say, I'm really offended that you haven't done that. Because people have told me I'm really upset. Like, okay, if you were really direct with me about something, I know that you're like that. So I wouldn't say, I know you were malicious, by the way. I felt that you were malicious today. I would say, I was a bit upset by what you said.
And also,
does that make sense?
Yes,
when I interpreted in that way.
If I'm really direct, and that's just who I am,
right?
Even if I said something direct and it hurt your feelings,
I'm valid. Agree. Yeah.
It doesn't matter that I'm a direct person.
I agree.
I should have been more sensitive around whatever the conversation was, and I can still apologize for that and go, I'm a really direct person, and sometimes I forget that that's not the way I should speak.
I 100% agree. Sorry, what I meant is I don't think someone would accuse you of being a bad friend.
I mean,
do you see what I mean?
If someone doesn't like direct people, they are unlikely to want to be my friend.
That's what I kind of meant in the initial bit. Sorry. That's what I meant. But of course, if somebody messaged me, and this has happened, and by the way, this is so interesting because I literally messaged one of my friends that he lives away. I'm sure you won't mind me saying. He's moved away last year. We weren't, we're very, very close, but it's not like I saw him every day, and we barely messaged, and he was rubbish with his phone when he was here. But he hasn't messaged me back for 6 months. And I messaged him and I said, have I done something wrong?
Yeah.
Because why are you not messaging me? Like, we haven't spoken in 6 months. You haven't let me know anything. And he replied, but I'm so sorry. No, of course you haven't. But in that situation, I think it's totally fair.
And in that situation, you were direct about it.
I was direct about it. But I was at the point where I was like, something is very dramatically wrong here.
Yeah.
We haven't spoken in a really long time. And then when you do speak to that person, you do realize, there are other things going on. But you are right in the sense that if someone came to me and said that, I would obviously apologize. And actually, I had a friend the other day that reached out and said, I'm really sad we don't see each other anymore.
Yeah.
And I said, it's not intentional, because at the start of this podcast, when he said, what defines a good friend? A good friend to me is somebody who is there in your time of need. And a good friend to me is somebody who has got your back. And a good friend is someone that you can you can be free with.
So I want to challenge that, because I always think, this is said a lot, of like, your friends are always there when it matters. Yeah. But why is it when it matters only at the lows? Because the ultimate
the highs also, sorry, in a time of need is like, I have one friend who's come with me, Vicky. She has come with me to every single workshop I've done, every single TED Talk. When I've had to, go through a really difficult time and go and stay with her, I've gone there. She's been there through the highs and the lows.
Right.
So I would say that she is somebody who I would define as like a very, probably one of my closest friends.
I think a lot of the loneliness that seems to occur, though, within friendship is that in a crisis, I have people. Like, when I had a crisis last year, I had people. When I went into hospital this year, I had people. When I throw a book launch, I also have people. There's a lot of gap in the middle. And to not have any people around, especially if you are the single childless friends, 20% of people say they don't have a single friend. Like, in this country, 20% of people, that's a huge number. And sometimes you just want someone who you can go on a walk with. Yeah. Sometimes you want someone who you can spend a Saturday with. And I think this is where I get it. I get we're all busy. One of my favorite sentences in the book is like, adult friendship is hard because we're all tired. Yeah, but I think this mentality of like, I will show up when it's a crisis. Well, sometimes I want you to show up when I just want company. And I think that's also part of the conversation of like, I know people care about me when I'm going through a crisis, but if we look at like a crisis like hospital, I was in hospital for 4 days. Everyone showed up. And also the effects of that hospital lasted for 4 months. Within those 4 months, people have limited energy, limited time span. Actually, a lot of the time it was me going to the pharmacy myself because I couldn't physically ask someone else to do it for me anymore.
Yeah.
And it was that long. And I think that's where we need to go more community centered.
Yes.
And this is where we have so many issues because we don't stay in our same neighborhood. So if you go back a few decades, people didn't travel as much. So it was expected that you would grow up in that community. We were much more religious. So you would have your local church where you would know acquaintances. You'd have what the research calls weak tie connections, which shows to boost our happiness, or like acquaintances, whatever you want to call them. And that is where community comes in. So it didn't need to be your best friend who would pick up the medicine at the pharmacy. It could have been the random woman at church who would be like, let me help you, or like delivering you food because you couldn't cook for yourself. Those are the parts that we're missing. And so a lot of the times when I'm talking about raising the priority of friends, the first thing I will hear is like, I have no time and energy though. And I just keep saying, like, do you not think you'd have more time and energy if we had greater community in our lives? It's because we're so busy trying to do everything alone that we have no time and energy left.
I want to challenge you on the point there around making new friends, because you talk about this in the book as well. And you say the reason why we don't respect relationships is because we see them as replaceable. Why is it so difficult for us to make new friends? Because you are 100% right when it comes to the community element. Even when I go for a walk and I see the same person who's at the fruit shop and I smile and wave at him, I feel happy.
Yeah.
You know, if I see my friend in the coffee shop that's near me and I wave to her, I feel happy. And I look out for her every single day when I walk past.
Yeah.
Every single day I look out for her. And she's not like my best friend or anything, by the way. But, you know, it's really nice to see the same people over and over again and feel comforted. But do you not think we have a responsibility to be more out there when it comes to making friends? Because whilst I agree that we're moving, we're traveling, we are not staying in the same places, we also have virtual communities, number one. And there are also loads of events in London now, loads, where you can go and you can meet people. You can volunteer and you can meet people. You can help at a charity and you can meet people. I do free walks with Aloe all the time. You can come along to those. But you know, I'm not the only one. There are so many free run clubs and so many different things that are going on right now. Do you not think that the conversation should be more around pushing people forward to say, okay, I get it, you feel lonely. I totally understand that. I understand that if you're single and you're in your 30s, that there's this added horrible pressure that you're a loser and you're failed in your life because you're not married yet. Trust me, I know that. But what can we do about it? And how can we encourage people to move away from this kind of victim mentality?
So I think when I spoke about how friendships can often be treated as disposable, it was me talking about how we have a very like fix it no matter what mentality around romantic relationships, especially as they get longer and more serious. That like you will go to couples counseling to try to save a marriage, to save a relationship. But with friendship, I'm not saying you have to go to therapy with your friend. I'm saying we don't even try to like fix a problem. We just disappear on each other.
Right.
And rather than like cutting those strings, this is what's leading to a lot of people saying like, I have no friends in my life. And as much as it's very easy or simple to say, go to these community events, the issue is when you have shame around your aloneness, the shame keeps you isolated. And so it feeds messages in your brain, which are like, well, who would want to be friends with me?
Yeah.
No wonder I have no friends. I'm an unlovable person.
Yeah.
In which case, it's very hard to even leave the front door, let alone sign yourself up. And then also, one of the messages I hear a lot is like, I'm worried going to an event alone. People are already going to think I'm a loner. And then the other struggle I hear is like people go to these events and trying to bridge that gap from someone you see at a book club once a month to actually someone who will pick up the phone when I'm in hospital is really hard. And this is why this like, just make new friends mentality.
Yeah.
It starts in the playground of like your mum will push you out to the school gate and be like, go make new friends. And it's like, okay, no one teaches us how, which is why I had this whole section of the book of like, I'm going to talk to you in really common basic sense. And I don't care whether you look at my book and go like, you've written a Friendship 101 book for 7-year-olds, because we never got taught it at 7-year-olds. And like one of the things in the book is I say like when someone talks to you, you can respond with a comment, you can respond with a question, you can respond like all of these things if you have never been taught the art of conversation, and I'm very lucky to be surrounded by very good conversationalists, podcast hosts, like things like that, people know the art of conversation. And yet, when were you ever taught how to have a good conversation?
So true.
You learnt it, and you have thousands of hours in your belt because that is literally your job, to be good at conversation. And there are some people who get into a room and just go mute because they don't know what to say and they don't know how to reply. And then they feel awkward and they go inwards on themselves. So I think a lot of what I want to do around the making new friends part is be like, hey, look, you're not alone.
Yes.
It sounds like a default thing that we all have friends in. It's natural and automatic. But actually the research shows if you accept that friendship takes work, which is what going to therapy is, like, even if it's just individual therapy, is working on yourselves. If you accept it takes work, you're more likely to have more friendships in your life. Yeah. So it's the people who assume that friendships are automatic and natural and just happen by coincidence and by accident. Unless you're in a school playground or you go to university and you're surrounded, the proximity you have with the number of people around you, you can make friends all the time. I don't know about you, but I don't come across a lot of strangers day to day. And when I'm in a room with strangers, because of your comfort zone, I am very likely to talk to the people I already know. So a lot of the how to make new friends is going to events alone, which is out of your comfort zone. But how I do that is I go and I tell myself I can leave at any moment.
Yeah.
Leaving your phone in your bag because you don't realize the phone is actually a barrier to anyone coming up to you. The reason why you're using that phone is because you're so aware of what you look like. You feel awkward standing there by yourself.
Yeah.
And then also when you're in rooms with people that you actually know, pay attention to the people you don't know. And I promise you, if you look around the room, you will find one person standing alone who knows no one, and just be that good human in that room and go up to them. And even if it's something as simple as in your 4 people that you know in the room, open the circle, let someone else join. If
100%.
you have a closed circle, no one is going to walk up to you, but actually just opening the circle a little bit, smiling to that person across the room. Or I had it recently when I went to a dating event and there was a woman stood alone in the corner of the room, and obviously, like, it's typical me, went to a dating event and ended up making four women friends rather than talking to the men in the room. But I went up to her and I was like, oh, have you come by yourself? I came with 2 friends. So I was like, have you come with yourself? Come join us. And I only noticed her because I was writing this
100%.
book. And I have been that person in a room, and you are so grateful when someone comes up to you and you're like, oh, thank you. I didn't know anyone. I was feeling really awkward. Do you know a lot of people here? And like, as soon as that initiation has happened, I'm okay and I'm good. But I find it very hard to break that ice initially. And so this is where I use the sentence of people don't wave, but they always wave back.
Yeah, I love that. It's really interesting. The reason I challenged you on that is because I do see a lot of people saying, what's the big deal? Just make a new friend. There's so many available opportunities now. You probably don't think it, but I also feel like that a lot when I go to events. I'm not a beauty influencer, but I get invited to lots of beauty stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not a fashion creator, but I get invited to lots of fashion stuff. And my defense is I'll go and then I'll leave.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm actually okay with that. But there have been so many times, I remember in the beginning, I went to one dinner. It was so uncomfortable. I felt like the biggest loser. I went, everyone was dressed in very snazzy stuff, right? I will always wear trainers to an event because I walk there.
Yeah.
Very rarely will I wear heels. Very, very rarely. Everyone was in heels. I sat down and I was in the middle. So there was 2 people this side and then 2 people this side. These 2 were talking to each other and these 2 were talking to each other.
Yeah.
And the person was like double the distance away from me that was opposite. I have never felt so uncomfortable and awkward in my own life. And I do understand how it can feel very damaging if you've had lots of friendship breakups, if you have really close friends, if you're used to going to events with people. Now, really interestingly, throughout this conversation, I really tried to reflect on why I'm not so affected by friendship breakups. And I think it's because I've been so hyper independent. I rarely take people to events with me. Rarely. But I never had anyone to take with me. So now I just go by myself and I'm just so used to it. And this is where I think it's really important to remember is that the more that you do something, the better you will become. If you go to events alone and you feel uncomfortable for the first 10 times, I guarantee you 100% the next 10 other times you're going to feel a little bit less uncomfortable. Because you've been in that position before. It's just very normal that your brain will start to exercise this muscle and you'll become better at doing something that you feel uncomfortable with. Now, I'm not saying that that's the solution for people to do. I'm not saying, go and experience so much anxiety and go to an event alone and talk to 10 other people. But what I am saying is that sometimes you do have to push yourselves to do uncomfortable things because that's the only way to overcome them.
And also, if you paid attention to all the things you said there, anytime you felt bad was when you were thinking about everyone else in the room. Everyone else is wearing heels. Exactly. And actually, that shows you that, and you said at the beginning, like, well, you wouldn't guess this about me. No one would guess that about me either. Yeah. And the funny thing is, this is what I realize when I go into rooms like this. There are even the people in conversation are probably insecure about the way they look, around what 100%. They're wearing, or whether they're sounding stupid in a conversation, for example, and no one is thinking about you. And this is where, like, there's a psychological phenomenon called the spotlight effect, and we think everyone's thinking about us all the time, and they're not. This is why I tell you to put your phone in the bag. You're holding that phone because you are so aware of what everyone else is thinking about you, but you're not thinking about what you're actually looking for in that room. And so this is where, if you go to these events, one of the ways to take pressure off is to actually set yourself a goal. And it's not necessarily like, I need to have got a contact, or like in networking events, for example. It could literally be like, my goal is to talk to one new person today.
Yes.
And that's your whole goal for, but you know what? The number of times I've gone to an event and talked to one new person, and that one new person has actually converted into a friend. And yesterday I was talking to someone who was like, I've been trying to make new friends for literally 6 months. I'm brand new in the city, and like no one gets past the first date kind of thing. And then they stop making effort, all of this. And I was like, it's a numbers game. Because think about dating. It's the same way. And I've gone on friendship dates on apps like Bumble's BFF. The chance you're actually going to get on with a person is already quite low. And then for it to gel naturally, like friendship is meant to, like when the conversation is flowing easily and like they're making as much effort to make plans with you as you're making with them, like that is a numbers game. Yes. And so out of maybe the 30 people I've tried to make friends with in the last 6 months, I've probably only made one friend out of that. And yet having that one new friend has had a drastic difference to my life in terms of the amount of company I have, even the text back and forth, the voice notes. I'm literally opposite to you. I'm always sending voice notes. I'm always doing FaceTime calls. I'm always on my phone. But it's because I don't have a lot of time to see people. And like a lot of my friends are across London as well. Yeah. So I'm always like, my friends know, the joke with my friends is like, Michelle picks up the phone within one ring. So if I'm always the emergency contact.
Really?
Yeah. But
that's amazing.
But I'm not a good friend in some other ways. Like everyone has their strengths and everyone has their weaknesses. I'm not the friend you go to if you want compassion and kindness a lot of the time. You often, like if you go back together with your ex, I'm not. I have a very low tolerance for people returning back to people who treat them badly. So I'm not the friend to go to for that.
Interesting.
And I can be too honest. And so a lot of friends won't come to me for that. The reason why there's a chapter in the book called Am I the Problem is I'm very self-aware of what I do bring to the table and what I don't bring to the table. And I was very fortunate to have one of my good friends write the foreword of the book. And she said it quite brilliantly last week, where she was like, Michelle is loyal. She is like ride or die. Like she will come back for you and she will come out swinging for you. But don't go to her if you are not ready for the truth. And
I love that.
I think that people...
I'm a similar-ish friend, actually. Yeah. But I would say I'm very compassionate, though. But I will say how I feel in a different way. I do want to actually challenge you on something you wrote in the book. Yeah. Where you said, am I the problem?
Yeah.
Do you think that sometimes people can be the problem?
Yes. And I think within that chapter, I was self-aware about how I probably was making too many friends. I was a pushover. I was a people pleaser, which then made it very hard to make the correct friends that I needed in my life. And also, what I say in that chapter is we're also asking the wrong question rather than personalizing it and saying, are you the problem? It's, why is friendship a problem in your life? And when I started unpicking my own relationship to friendship, I was like, look, I made a bunch of friends in the first year of primary school, and then I went into hospital, lost all of them overnight. I then made new friends first year of secondary school, went into hospital, lost them overnight, returned back to school. The first thing that got said to me was, I thought you had died. And I'd literally experienced, you know, that whole thing of like imagining a funeral, like you dying and like everyone moving on without you. I experienced that. I saw my friendship group. I had a friendship group when I left for hospital, divide into 4 different friendship groups. Everyone made new friends and my friendship group didn't exist anymore. So I didn't know how to return back to that. And so what that made me do was cling on to my friendships so desperately so that I didn't lose anyone ever again. Unfortunately, that creates a friend who will bend over backwards, and it doesn't often create friendships with a lot of respect, because if you know that person will bend over backwards and have no boundaries, you do walk all over them. It's almost like human nature because they're never standing up for themselves. And so that's what created a lot of problems in my friendship, because a lot of our foundational friendships stem from school and university. So if I didn't make those friendships in a healthy place, then when it came to your 20s, when it came to your 30s, is it shocking or surprising that a lot of those friendships fell out of my life?
Yeah, but everything you've just said is very complimentary to you. Like, I'm a people pleaser, which means I always said yes. Or
is it complimentary? People pleasing is manipulation. It's just covert manipulation.
But it's still a positive trait. It's not the fact that
it's definitely not a positive trait.
But what I mean is that it's not saying.
Okay, should I say something less complimentary? I had a very big temper when I was growing up.
By the way, this is not an attack on you. I'm just saying that a lot of people do say that, right? Like, I'm a people pleaser, or I never know how to say no, or sometimes I don't know, I care too much, or whatever it is. A lot of the time where people, I think, lose their friendships and their relationships is when they haven't taken accountability for their own actions. Like you just said, for example, that you had a bad temper.
I had a bad temper and I yelled at a lot of friends when I was growing up. And that, within one of the chapters in the book, I also say, like, I am responsible for the 3 friendships that fell apart in my final year of university. There are ways where it was two-sided, and yet I take ultimate responsibility, because the last fight that happened, I spoke to people at a volume I hope I never speak to anyone ever again.
Yeah.
I walked out of that flat and was like, I am never going to speak to anyone like that again, and I have never spoken to a friend like that ever since.
Yeah.
And I take accountability for that. And I had to learn how to have conversations in a different way. And when I felt attacked, because it was 3 friends coming towards me, like, there are reasons why I retaliated like that. It's still not an excuse for how I behaved. And out of those three friendships, it ended all 3. And then one came back into my life 2 years later. And we both basically took accountability for the things that we had gone through. And this is the thing, there are things, everyone has flaws. Everyone has ways where they're very difficult people to be with in their life, whether it's romantically or platonically or be a family member. Like, there are ways where I am a difficult person.
Yes.
And that is okay. And there are ways you are a difficult person. And that can coexist as long as we are both self-aware about who we are and what we do. And I think that's where, yes, there are times where I was probably quite a bitchy person when I was younger, because I was insecure, and bitchy people tend to be insecure, and insecure people tend to be bitchy. And so you had to go through those teething pains, and especially in your teenage years, it's making the decision of whether you want to continue being that person.
Exactly. And this is what I was trying to say. When I actually had a video of mine went very viral on TikTok, and people attacked me so much for saying this. I said that if you are constantly blaming other people throughout school, university, your jobs, your friendships, and saying, the reason why I don't have any friends at the age of 35 or 40 is because every single person I've interacted with is bitchy, is rude, is manipulative, is horrible. I don't trust people. I think that if you choose to see that in someone, you will. If someone chooses to see the bad in me, they will. I am not a perfect person. Never in my life have I met somebody who is 100% perfect.
Yeah.
That person does not exist. No. So if you choose to see the negative traits in me, that is all you will see. And that is what some people choose to see. They choose to see sometimes all the negative traits I have, and they fixate on them. So then the actions that I do on a daily basis, I do some good ones and some bad ones. And what they'll say is, Shivani does these ones. And that's the problem that I have when we come to judging our whole life based on the friendships we have and make these blanket statements. The reason I have 0 friends, you can have some people who are your acquaintances. You can have some people that you see once or twice in the office, but you cannot tell me that you have 0 friends because every single person you interact with is rude.
But
or
also,
horrible.
this
I
is
don't
where it
believe it.
comes back to this, like your friends aren't disposable, right? Because
Right.
if you look at anything I've said about myself that is a bad or negative characteristic, I have worked on all of them. But all of those bad or negative things, even the being too honest, on the same side of it is also what you likely like about me as a friend. Do you get what I mean? And so you can't selectively choose when that's convenient to you and what's not. So for example, one of my closest friends, rubbish at replying to texts, obviously doesn't work very well because I reply instantly and she takes 3 working days, sometimes 3 weeks to reply to a text. And also one of the things I like about her is she doesn't ask for a lot, like in friendship. And those are two sides of the same coin. So you can't hate when she isn't replying to something, but then she never asks for anything either. And it's like, you have to look at both sides. And we do this a lot in all of our relationships of like, oh, it's only when it's convenient to you that you like that trait. But if you look at how that trait benefits you as well, it's a much fuller picture. And then you can recognize why that you chose that person in your life.
100%. It's like when people say, I love that my man is so protective, but I hate that he's firm with me.
And I hate that he's jealous, because protectiveness often, like the bad side of it can sometimes be jealousy. And it's like, okay, but you love it when in certain contexts.
So true. I really want to talk about one point that you said, just because I'm getting married this summer. If someone asks you to do something, you can decline it, even if it's being a bridesmaid or a maid of honor. Now, I want to give you my perspective before you bite my head off and tell me why I'm wrong. If someone asks you to be their bridesmaid or maid of honor, from my limited knowledge in this world, I think that they must be a good friend of yours. If a random person asked me to be maid of honor or bridesmaid, I would think it's weird. I really want to talk to you about something, because I was talking to a friend the other day about how we both find it very strange and very uncomfortable when certain people like to pretend they're closer to us than they're not. And not us as a couple, by the way, like you can't be friends with us. Just, I find it very difficult when someone says to me, I'm so proud of you and I've met them one time in my life. I find it weird. How can you be proud of me? You don't know me. Or when someone says, you're like my sister. No,
Shivani,
I'm not.
I say that to people on Instagram in my DMs. Like,
I think it's a little bit different though when it's said in a very, I was talking about a specific person, they're just like, I'm so proud of you. I have no idea. You know, I find it, but you don't know me to be proud of me. It's how I feel.
Why do you need to be close to someone to be proud of them?
Well, how can you be proud of them? You don't know what they've gone through. I just met you last week. How do you know that? How can you be proud of me?
Why does closeness matter when it comes to someone's pride, though?
It's got nothing to do with pride. How can someone say they're proud of me if I just
That's
met
literally
them?
the same word, proud and pride.
No, but how can you be proud? How can you genuinely be proud of me if you don't know me?
Because if you've told me something like, I've just set a boundary for the first time, I don't care if you're a stranger to me. I'm actually genuinely so proud of you because I know how hard it is to set a boundary for the first time.
That's because you're passionate about boundaries.
Right, but I don't know you. Like, do you get what I mean? That's
but that's your life mission. That's like one of your key like life missions and purpose in life is like, if I see someone overcome something. So for example, if I see my niece, you know, overcome something that she never wanted to do, or if she has self-doubt and she's broken through it, yes, I'm proud of them. But if a random person says to me, I'm so proud of you for doing something really minor, I'm like, you don't know me. It's so random. It doesn't feel genuine.
But their pride is coming from a respect and knowing from their own life of how difficult that task may be. And even if it's a task for you that might be trivial and didn't take a lot of effort, let's say you've come off a stage and a member of the audience has said to you, like, I'm so proud of you for that talk. Like,
I don't know why it makes me feel weird. Yeah, that's a great example. It makes me feel weird. If I came off and a random person who I don't know said, I'm really proud of you.
Also, that audience member is likely sitting there going, wow, I can never be on a stage like that. That is huge. That must be really difficult. And even if it's not difficult, well done.
I'm proud of you is very personal. It's like, I'm proud of you. It feels very disingenuine is what I mean when a random person says it to me. I don't think I've ever had it where—
You don't believe it?
I don't believe it. But I do believe it if my mum or my dad or, you know, you said it to me because you know me. You know, when you came in here and you said, this is amazing, well done. I'm like, oh, thank you. But well done is a very different phrase to I'm proud of you. And I also think, you know, with getting married, one of the things that is making me crack up is the fact that people have said, you're like a sister to me. I'm so surprised you didn't invite me. Since when have I been like a sister to you?
It's so funny you said this.
Since when have I been like your best mate? Like, sorry, what?
So this is two things going on. One, I say within the book that one of the things I hate about weddings is if I am not as close to you as you are to me,
Yeah.
I don't want to know. Like, if you are my number 2 friend and I'm your number 25 friend, I don't want to know. Like, can you just be my number 2 friend and me be your 25? But in a wedding, it reveals that because of the tier of hen party, bridesmaids, everything.
Yes.
The other thing that happens, and the reason why you're like, wait, but I'm not as close to you as you somehow are saying to me, how am I a sister to you? Is because let's say you're the kind of person who has 100 friends in your life, and I'm the kind of person who has 6 people. I have 6 very close friends, and I don't want 25 friends in my life.
Yeah.
As a result, if you are one of the 6, it doesn't matter if I'm your 25th. Like, you literally couldn't be my 25th because I don't have 25 friends.
Yeah, but we're not friends. They're just making this up. They're like, we see you as a sister. Sorry, why have you seen me as a sister? Give me the evidence to show me because I haven't seen you in 6 years.
Right, okay, so that might just be wanting a wedding invite.
That's what I mean. This is what I meant with my first point is people like to say that they're close to you when they're not.
Well, they can benefit from it. Or a wedding invite.
Right.
But I think also when it comes to like the bridesmaids and the hen parties and all of that, we have to accept it's a skill set. Like
Is it though? Is it a skill set to be a maid of honor and bridesmaid?
Planning a hen party, which is largely falls on the role of a maid of honor.
Fair enough.
You want a good hen party? You better hope you have someone who's good at event organization. If you have me, for example, I will forget the tickets. I will forget the passports. I will probably have forgotten to book the hotel. You really want me? I love you. Like, you could be my number 1 best friend. I can love you to death. You can be the closest person in the world. And I will say to you, look, if you really want me to do this, it is going to challenge our friendship, and I actually would worry whether we'd have a friendship left. You are asking me to do something that I am so bad at doing. Now, if you want me to give the maid of honor speech, I'm good at that. I can do that, but I don't need the title. I don't need everyone in the room to know that I'm your closest friend. Yes. Give it to someone who it matters to. That's why I would decline it. It's because I ultimately am doing it truly from a selfless place. I'm not scared of the hard work. I'm doing it from a place of I want you to have the best wedding, and I know me doing your hen party, it's not going to be the best hen party.
Yeah.
And there is someone who finds this more natural, will find this way more easy. And also the extra benefit is I would actually be able to enjoy the hen party rather than me stressing myself out for 6 months.
Do you think it's a selfish response? Because you actually say this in the book. If someone asks you to do something, you can decline it, even if it's being bridesmaid or maid of honor. But from your response there, are you not, okay, and this is where I'm conflicted, and we can have 2 thoughts at the same time, remember? One, I believe that we should all play to our strengths and we should focus on our strengths. And if we focus on those, there are other people in the group who can, make up for it. I do believe that in any organization, in any team, with any friendship group. However, if you are really close to this person, and it's not just a random person who's pretending to be your best mate, if you are really close to them and they've said to you, I know your shit, Michelle, at event planning, but I want you to be my maid of honor because you are one of my closest friends. And look, I know that you might not be the best person to do this, but I want you to give it your best shot.
I mean, honestly, I would still worry that it would wreck the friendship. I just know me. I know me, and I know.
Isn't that looking from your perspective? Because I've told you I'm giving you grace. I've told you that I'm not expecting you to be the world's best event planner. I'm saying to you, I understand that you don't love it. I understand that it's not your best thing. I understand that it may not be the best hen of my entire life, but I want it to be you planning it.
Right. And when the hen comes around, I will be shocked if there is not a level of disappointment that it's the one hen you will have in your entire life and it's not up to the standard that you want and frankly deserve. Like, I genuinely want you to have the best hen you could possibly have.
But it's not, when you say you want to have the best hen, if the other person, look, your face. You're looking at me with so much disgust.
Like, that's clear.
You're looking at me with so much disgust. It's making me laugh.
It's not disgust, but it's just like it's literally like can't keep going. Like,
there is also a certain level, I think, of responsibility that you have when someone asks you to do something. I understand. Like, if you said to me, I want you to, write me a book as my wedding present, I'd be like, listen, I don't have the time to write you a book, mate. However, Would I write you a little chapter? Yes, I would, because I know it's important to you.
Right, and that's why I said I will give the maid of honor speech if you would like. That will benefit both of us. But at the same time, like,
but why is it benefiting both of us? The wedding is really about.
But as I say, like, I am not scared of hard work. Like, it is not the fact that I am saying no to planning a hen party because it's going to take hours and times out of my day. And absolutely, I would go over and beyond for you.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, my limitations limit how good even me at my best is
plan
going
with
to
another bridesmaid. But I want you to be the maid of honor still.
Honestly, the reality is not a single friend would actually ask this of me. Like, I have had these conversations with my
if it's a friend, like you said to me, a friend could ask you for that.
But the thing is, I genuinely in my life, all of my friends know about this and none of my friends have fought me on it. All of them have agreed and been like, you would be awful as a maid of honor.
Okay, but this is my point. But what if a friend did say that they still want you to be it?
I just think ultimately, like, you're basically not going to rest until I say yes,
No, but
right?
this is like the argument of when you said, if a friend came to you and said, why haven't you texted me for 5 days? I hate you. Well, you didn't say it in those words.
I know,
you didn't say, but I'm saying that how I interpreted it was like, but my friends wouldn't think that of me. You're saying your friends wouldn't ask it of you. But what if there is somebody whose friend does still say that?
This is where the conversation would take place, where they would say, but I want you to be the maid of honor. And I'm like, okay, fine. Can we come up with some sort of agreement where, like, I do the speech, I can have the label or not have the label, whatever works for you. Maybe the other person who's doing majority of the work wants to have the label. Like, I can do certain elements of the hen party. We have a conversation about it.
Right.
Like, no part of this is, again, because I can't be bothered. No part of it is because I don't love you. I don't care about you. Genuinely, I think if you are having a wedding, you don't want people around you who are going to add to the stress. There is only so much I will be able to control. And if I am actually planning a hen party, I know myself. I know what I'm like when I'm trying to organize an event. I will be in such a bad mood and I will be so stressed. I would worry how much of that energy would infect the group. And I would do my best to boundary it and I would do my best to hide it.
Yes.
But the reality is when I'm on that scale of stress, which event organization specifically is the only thing that can get me to that point.
I hate it too.
Well, to the point where I've just done 6 events in 2 weeks and I literally said to my PR, do not involve me in anything because I swear to God, you will see the worst side of me.
Yeah.
And I just think you don't want that on your hen party. But yes, I'd have a conversation about it. I just don't really see a reality where I'm going to be backed into a corner where I am going to be forced to say yes, because it's not going to help either of us. And what's going to happen, and this sounds like a ridiculous scenario, but do you know how many stories I've heard in the last 2 years of people saying the last time they spoke to their maid of honor was their own wedding? Like, it breaks friendships apart. This is why, like, I am so terrified of it.
Brides are again, it's because brides are expecting too much. I actually just recorded a podcast a couple of weeks ago where we were talking about, are abroad weddings selfish or not? And in that, we spoke about abroad hens. Now, the amount of DMs I got of people telling me I couldn't go to my friend's hen because it was abroad and it was too expensive.
Yeah.
I couldn't take the time off work. They didn't allow kids and I didn't want to bring them. I said that I think, personally, by the way, if a bride wants to not have kids at her wedding, fair enough. But then don't be pissed off if your mate's mad at you about it.
So it's your wedding, it's your choice, but you also have your consequences of your 100%. Decisions.
The comments on TikTok are like, you are delusional. I would never have kids at my wedding. Kids ruin weddings. Like, people on TikTok hate children at weddings for some reason. I don't know. There should be a bloody campaign about it. I personally understand why people don't want children at their weddings. I've got my wedding coming up. I do not feel comfortable to tell some of my best friends, do not bring your 3-month-old. I don't feel comfortable in it.
Yeah.
I just think if they bring them, it's no extra headache on me. But obviously, if your baby is crying throughout the ceremony, go out the room. Obviously, that's just common sense to me. If we're going around the fire, I was going to say in the Gujarati term, which is Feras, when we're getting married and your baby's screaming, obviously you're going to leave the room, aren't you? Obviously, that's just common sense because you're my friend. I'm not inviting like random people there. My parents are, so they can, and their friends are old. I don't expect any of them to have babies. But I guess what you're saying about the hen is kind of what I said to my parents. I did not want a big wedding because I do not care about the details of the flowers and this arrangement and all that. I don't care. I don't have an interest in small things.
Yeah.
Ask me about the podcast you'd have I know every single inch in detail because I do care about that. But even in my previous job, my manager would say to me, you are very big picture. You're not good with all this tiny, small details.
Yeah.
And I'm not. So I said to my parents, if you want to do this wedding for 400 people where I'm only inviting 20 of my friends and the majority are your friends, and obviously people I know, none of them are random.
Yeah.
But my parents are doing this mainly because for them, then you
plan
organise
it.
it.
Yeah.
Because I hate it, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to ruin my relationship with Nikhil.
Yeah.
I am not going to argue with him over things I do not care about
Yeah.
for a wedding of your dreams. It
Yeah.
is not the wedding of my dreams.
Yeah.
And that was a compromise that took me a long time to accept and to come to.
I often say I don't care about a lot, but when I care about something, I really care. But I'm the same as you.
Yeah.
I don't care about the details. I don't care. And when I was engaged, we'd had conversations about like we were going to elope. Because I'd been writing this book, I knew how devastating it is to friendships and like friendship breakups because of overseas hens, because of overseas weddings. And also not just whether you can bring your kids, whether you can bring your partner. I've seen friendships fall apart because they've had a no ring, no bring rule, which means if you're not engaged, you're not. And it's funny because the friend who I know fell out around this, she was with her partner longer than the bride and groom had been together, but just didn't believe in marriage. And as a result, wasn't allowed to bring her partner. And I have another friend going through it right now where basically the bride has deemed her relationship not. She basically thinks the relationship is not going to survive by the time the wedding comes around, and she's not said it in the most overt sense. But this is where every time I started thinking about my wedding or wedding planning, I was like, I'm not sure I want to capture the 6-7 women in my life right now as forever friends, knowing how devastating friendship breakups can be. And knowing that that's not a picture I necessarily would want to show my kid one day, because half the picture are people that I don't know anymore. And I can't guarantee these are friends who are going to be forever friends, because I'm not sure a forever friend exists anymore. And because I've seen the people who I thought would be forever friends, people who I would have chosen as my maid of honor, not be in my life anymore. And so if that's not a certainty, actually that means no friendship is a certainty. And that's where it's quite a devastating thing where it's like, weddings are framed as the best day of your life, and yet it has such a detrimental toll on the platonic relationships in your life.
I do not think the wedding should be the best day and the only day that you should ever be happy in your life. There are many other occasions that you're going to be just as happy in your life, right? Many other, by the way.
And it should just be a good party.
One of the best days I'm sure I'm going to have in my life.
Yeah.
One of. I know which the day is going to be the best day of my life. I'm not going to say it yet. But I actually want to challenge you again. Why would you not want to show your child a picture of your wedding where you had friends? Because shouldn't you be open to telling him, I wasn't friends with this person, but I want to normalize friendship breakups?
What I mean is, like, I still find it quite hard to look at pictures of my two ex-best friends. Like,
why, may I ask?
Because they honestly, I'm going to start crying if I talk about either of them. Like, I lived with one for 8 years. Like, I lived with one for 8 years and it ended in a ghosting.
Yeah,
the other one, it's painful. It's painful and it hurts. And when you do have that go-to best friend and they're your platonic soulmate, they've been with you through hospital, they were your emergency contact, and then it ends, and it ends over largely, it's in my life, it's been largely over a partner.
That's very hard.
It's really hard. And it's also really hard to be somewhat replaced by someone they barely know.
Yeah.
And like, obviously, it's not usually it's usually someone they're going to stay in a relationship with and then have marriage and kids, and therefore like it becomes a tough decision. But it's why I'm very cautious about being honest about a relationship. And one of the ones where it occurred, I had only said, I think you're better off without him, while they were broken up. I just didn't foresee them getting back together. And because we're 18 years old, I'd never had a friend get back together with an ex. And so I said it while they were broken up, and it was just never forgotten. And so it gets to the point when you're in your late 20s and early 30s, where push comes to shove, if it's a decision between a best friend and a boyfriend, usually the boyfriend wins.
You think that's wrong?
I think it's wrong when it comes down to the fact that in one situation, it's because she wouldn't have her boyfriend take accountability. All I was asking for was an apology. And like, he had done a number of things at this house party that were unacceptable. You can read about it in the book, but like a number of comments, sexual comments that were just not okay. And the next morning I was received with, you're jealous. He wouldn't say that. I don't believe you. And again, this is a woman who I lived with for 8 years. And I was like, and worse than that, a man we lived together. So he was over in my apartment 3-4 times a week. I really got on with him. All I was asking for was an apology. And that led to the ghosting. So I think that's where, if you're insecure in your relationship at all, what happens is if a friend says something like that, of like, I want an apology from your boyfriend, it becomes a threat, right?
Yeah.
And so rather than actually being like, I don't know about you, but for me, if a friend came up to me and was like, your boyfriend spoke to me like that, it's unacceptable, I want an apology, I'd be like, I'd be the first one. I'd be like, you better go apologize to my friend. You do not
sure.
speak to women like that. You do not speak to my friend like that. Absolutely unacceptable. And I'm going to question our relationship if you behave like this, because I want to be able to walk into a room and be proud of the person I'm in a relationship with. And you do not treat the people in my life like that. That is how...
justice seeker like me.
But also...
I am like that also. I'm like, how could you think that? How could you do that? And then I would see it as like a character.
And also, I would go to my friend and I would be like, he will apologize. I hope he will apologize at least. And also, I'm sorry. You shouldn't have had to go through that. I'm sorry that happened. And it's my responsibility because the only reason he's in your life is because of me.
Yeah.
And so I would take accountability. And I think that's ultimately... It's too lazy to blame it on the guys, because ultimately this is where it comes back to that quote of like, it doesn't have to be a choice between your best friend and your boyfriend if you are secure in your relationship.
100%.
If you're insecure, that's where you perceive your friendships as a threat.
But Michelle, I don't think you should have to ask for an apology ever. I think that you should never have to say, I demand an apology. I'll tell you why. When you demand an apology, you're demanding a word. When someone is sorry, they will show you. You will feel it. You will understand that they actually feel bad for what they said. But if we are in a position where we say, that person's done that to me, I demand an apology, it's so easy to write it, but it's a totally different thing to feel it.
I get that. And also, this is a man who I was not choosing to be in my life. I was asking for an apology from someone who I never had a choice over. What I was asking for is an acknowledgement of what happened.
Yeah.
And that's all it was. Like, I get what you mean. I didn't even care if he had heart behind it. I didn't even care what his
They
attention...
just acknowledge what you did because it was so inappropriate. Yeah.
Acknowledge what happened. Acknowledge what happened from both parties. My best friend and her boyfriend needed to acknowledge what happened. And frankly, I didn't even care if you meant the apology. I just wanted to acknowledge what happened. And that is the benchmark I have for people who I don't choose in my life. Would I go to a friend and say, I want an apology? No, I would... For me, what's important to heal and resolve a conflict is I want to be understood. So I actually don't need an apology. Yeah. What I need is you to understand where I'm coming from. And I think that friendship breakup happened when I was 24, and that's probably where I've evolved as well. But back then, it was because I just accepted this is a man I don't choose in my life. All I want is an acknowledgement of what happened last night and that it won't happen again. That's all I need.
So I presume that her actions and his actions accumulated over a period of time where it frustrated you, or no?
No, it was quite overnight.
That was, so sorry, you said that and then they ghosted you.
I said that, there was an argument, we were arguing back and forth, and then at some point she stopped replying, and then I replied saying like, are you just not going to reply? And she just never replied.
And then you never chased it again?
I never chased it again, and I think I was too hurt to. And like when I look back on that, that does show where I was 24 years old. I would have picked up the phone. I would have not had that argument over text, first of all. Second of all, I would have not chosen to have that argument right before I was about to walk on stage and give a talk, which was not good timing. And then also, third of all, I would have picked up the phone. And I was too hurt and too angry about the things that were said in the argument. And being realistic and being kind to my 24-year-old self, some of the things that were said within that argument were so hurtful that actually sometimes it's not the fight that breaks it, it's what's said. Yeah, and then you can't forget what was said. Yeah. And so it wasn't the initial issue of what her boyfriend had said, it was actually what she had said within the argument.
That hurt you more.
That was... It's kind of that thing of like, how can someone who's known you for that long think those things about you? And even just something as simple as like, you're jealous. And I was like, I have been so happy for you. And also I've had a good relationship with him for 3 years. Like, and having those kind of conversations, yeah, it's just
really hard.
It's really hard.
I want to ask you a really difficult question. If you know that someone has done something wrong, and you know that somebody has treated you badly, how do you still grieve them?
I think you have to let go of the idea that you could change what happened. I think this is why when I talk about that friendship breakup that happened when I was 24 years old, I'm saying like, and ultimately I accept that like there are things that were said that wasn't going to magically, even if I did things differently, wasn't going to magically resurrect this friendship. I think you have to accept that people come into your life for a reason, season, or lifetime. Sometimes it ends and sometimes it shouldn't have ended, and it did, but you just have to accept what happened.
Yeah.
And letting go of the possibility of what could have been different is a part of the healing. Grieving it so you allow it to hurt, let that pain hurt and every time we shame ourselves of like, this is so silly, this shouldn't be a big deal, all of that, you're compounding it with shame. And so you're not actually accessing the sadness or the grief. And what happens around grief is there's an apathy that accompanies it, where a lot of the time, whatever else is going on in your life won't matter anymore because of that apathy. And a lot of the times you're like, oh, it's that devastation you feel is around the friendship breakup. And I'm like, no, that's the emotion grief. And because a lot of the times we confuse it as sadness, people don't realize this accompanying apathy is actually the signal of whether it's grief or whether it's sadness. And so letting it hurt, and then also opening yourself up to the potential of making new friends. Like ultimately, when someone leaves your life, it's creating space for new people to enter. And again, if I go back to when I made friends with those people who aren't in my life, like we stopped being friends at 24, but we were friends from our teenage years. I was a very different person when that friendship began. And so being able to accept that one of the side effects of growing and changing is that the people around you might grow and change as well, and might grow and change in opposite directions, means you can shoulda, woulda, coulda about what you could have done differently in friendship breakups. But in my view, if you learn from it, that's how you make your other friendships better.
For sure. I want to ask you what you think about unfollowing your friends. Unfollowing your ex is a very common thing that people do to help them heal, move on, not constantly see what they're up to, not constantly stalk them. When you've had a friendship breakup, it would be seen, and I've heard it being said, extremely petty, extremely dramatic, ridiculous. What are your thoughts? Do you think you should unfollow a friend after you've had a friendship breakup?
My thoughts are, in a romantic relationship, I don't just unfollow them, I block them, because I don't want them to have access to my information. And I don't think you don't get to have access to that information if you're not in my life.
But in a friendship?
And in a friendship, I would do the same.
I thought you were going to be like, my friendship is different. I was like, go on, tell me it's different.
No,
yours is the same.
I block my ex-friends because you don't get to see my life. And I don't like this nosiness or this curiosity around what's going on in my life. You don't get to know that.
Isn't that just too much?
Because I'm not blocking you. I'm not blocking you for you. I'm blocking you for me.
Yeah.
My boundaries are, I don't want you to have access to my life. I don't care what's going on in your life. Like, that's ultimately what I believe. So it's not... Being petty is to stab the knife in or make it, twist it and make it hurt, so that when they come to my page and discover they're blocked, they can hurt even more. I'm not doing it for that reason. I'm doing it because I don't want you to have access to my life, and I don't want you to stalk my page. I, in return, will not be stalking yours, because I was never going to be stalking yours anyway, because once you're out of my life, I'm doing what I can to heal that pain, heal that hurt, but I'm not going to go hurt myself more by going over to your page and looking at every single moment in your life which I was missing from.
Okay, but let's just take the example of you and your friend, right? You said, are you never going to talk to me again? She said, never going to talk to you. How quickly did you block her? Did we have social media back then, though?
I don't know. Like, maybe within a day? Like,
okay, but that's extreme. So let's say, okay, for example,
once it was over, once it was over.
But what if people change their mind? Okay, you learn and grow, right, in life, and you say, okay, listen, in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have said this, maybe I shouldn't have said that. I want to reach out. Now, actually, I just want to feel.
No, sorry, I'm not reopening doors that were already closed. Like, you had your chance there and then. But
what? So also, hold on, you can't grow and learn and then go back.
No, wait, hold on. Okay, so there are too many things going on. One, that friendship you mentioned, because it was a ghosting, it was a lot longer. So for me to naturally know it was over. When I said a day, I was thinking about the last friendship breakup I had, where it was ended with a text from her saying, I don't want to be friends anymore. I blocked her that day. Like, I actually don't even think it was the next day. I blocked her that day. But also, are there friends who have come back into my life? So remember I mentioned those 3 housemates I fell out with?
Yes.
We stopped being friends for 2 years. All 3 were blocked. I bumped into one of them at a party. She said hi. I remember saying hi back. She doesn't remember me saying hi back, apparently. I think I remember nodding back. And she was like, no, you completely blanked me. And I was like, no, I'm pretty sure I nodded, but it was like pitch black.
Okay.
And then I walked in, had this feeling of like, God, I miss her. And I went up to the birthday girl and I was like, I just saw her. I really miss her. Should I go tell her that? And she was like, yes, go tell her that. So I walked up to her and I was like, I really miss you. I don't like how that last argument happened. I know I was responsible for a lot of it. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. I'm really sorry. Can we please have a conversation?
Right.
And we went to the back room of this club, like found the private room and just had this long conversation for 3 hours. And we had to go on social media and unblock each other because
Right.
like we had been blocked.
But what if you don't see that person? You can mute someone. You can make sure you don't see their stories, right? But what if how you had that interaction with that person in person? What if you have that interaction with someone online and you're just like, I miss them, but you can't because you're blocked?
You usually have their number.
But you're not going to come across them online.
Yes, but if you
do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, but I don't understand a Instagram post that you come across where you are suddenly going to be like, yes, but you're not going to come across an Instagram post and be like, I suddenly want that person back in your life.
You might see them posing with a bunny and be like, oh, we had a bunny.
No, so for example, what happened to me last year was like, because there was a lot of like press articles about me last year, I had a number of ex-friends reach out. I don't block people's numbers.
Okay.
I block them on social media because that's for my healing. But
I just would die out of embarrassment. But you're right, actually, because...
But me and that friend, it was a joke. We sat there and unblocked each other. It was funny. And it was great. We have each other on social media now. It's all great.
Yeah.
But last year, I had 4 friends ex-friends text me after my breakup happened and was like, hey, I saw it in the paper. I hope you're okay. Like, they have my number.
Have you unblocked them?
No, like I don't need to unblock them. Like, as in, I don't want to see their stuff, and I also don't want you to see mine. We are good. I can't even remember the last time I went through and unblocked anyone, frankly. Like, apart from that friend, because we mutually decided.
After this conversation, you're going to be like, goodbye.
I just think your social media is yours, right? And I think even with some friendships, I can love you and hate your social media content. And I have certain boundaries around what I want on my social media. And if your whole page is diet content, I'm really like, I unfollow a lot of people I love and respect because you're posting about diets and I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
Like, I am more protective of my body image. And this is what I mean.
Yeah.
It's about me. It's not about you. Like,
Yeah,
you
I
post.
love that.
And ultimately, it's because I don't have a right to dictate what's on your social media page. Whereas in person, if you started talking about your latest diet or what you were eating, I would be able to say, hey, can we talk about something else? I can't do that with your social media page. It's not my right. Whereas in person, I can say like, can you talk about your new diet with someone else? Like, I'm just not the person for it. And like, you know me, I have body image stuff. And like, I've worked really hard to get my body image to the place it is. And like, I'm just not great in this kind of conversation.
Yeah, I love that.
And it would be so understandable as a friend to be like, yeah, sure, let's talk about something else. Whereas I can't do that with social media. So my only choice is to unfollow. And actually, I don't believe in muting because I think that's inauthentic. Because I think if I mute you, you think we're still following and I'm not seeing your stuff. Whereas I'd rather be authentic and unfollow. And if you ask me like, hey, why did you unfollow me? Which has happened multiple times. I've been able to say it's because of the diet content. Like, I don't follow anyone who posts diet content.
That's fair. I just would find it very uncomfortable to say that to someone if I just didn't.
You're so direct though.
I'm so direct because I was going to say, if it was to do with dieting, I'd be like, well, I didn't like that or whatever. It makes me feel insecure or it makes me feel upset and it makes me feel really uneasy. But there's nobody who, I guess there's not been a content style that's made me not like, there's not been a friend of mine that's been posting something that directly competes with my values. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why I would find it uncomfortable because the only reason I'd be unfollowing them is because I just don't want to be friends with them anymore.
Or if it conflicts with your morals and values, you likely wouldn't be friends with them.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, when it comes to inviting people on your hen and to your wedding and things like that, I'm very confident in who I've invited. And I'm very okay with if someone came up to me and said that because I mean, I made it sound as if I have like 10,000 friends, by the way. I don't have actually that many friends. I have like 10 friends who I've had from school and then a couple new ones.
So how do you handle that? So let's say someone comes up to you and goes like, I'm surprised I'm not on your hen party.
I would honestly be flabbergasted because I don't have that many close friends. I'd be like, get off your high horse, you weirdo.
Your facial reaction was literally like, your eye twitched. And I was like, okay, that was the reply. If someone came
to me and said, I was upset that I wasn't invited to your hen, that would be different from them saying, I was surprised you didn't invite me to your hen. I'd be like, that would put me in complete defense mode. Because I'd be like, we're not friends. I wouldn't say that. I don't know what I would say. Actually, I don't know what I would say.
Yeah.
But I don't expect anyone would come up to me and say that. If someone came up to me and said, I was a bit upset I wasn't invited to your wedding, I would turn around and say, I'm really sorry. I was only able to allocate, which is true, 20 people for the wedding, including my friend's husband. So that's like 10 friends.
Yeah.
Right? I was only able to allocate those. I'm really sorry. I had really limited numbers. My friend Brenna said this, people will meet you where they are. You know, I do believe if somebody really wants you at something, they will have you.
I agree with that. I also think
Under
it is
tight
possible
circum- yeah.
in a friendship for you to be more important to one person where
100%.
to another because of the difference you mentioned earlier of the reason why friendship breakups are more personal is because, as you said, when you are ending a romantic relationship, it's likely because you want to replace that person. And unless you're going to cheat, like you have to end it with one before you begin another. Whereas with friendship, if you're choosing to end it, it's a very personal decision because it's not like you are limited on numbers.
Yeah.
And as a result, you can have friends who are more important to you than you are to them.
Yeah.
And that is a really painful realization that unfortunately often only really comes up with weddings.
Yes.
Because in school, we had this whole hierarchy, right? Depending how old you are. With Bebo, you literally ranked your top 8 friends and you moved them around depending on how they behaved.
I didn't have that.
And then as you got older, you realized, oh, my friends don't need to compete. I can have different friends for different occasions.
Right.
And then there are different markers. So for example, I have been hurt not being invited to someone's hen party.
Yeah.
And for me, when I looked at our friendship, I was like, I don't get it. We've been on multiple holidays together, which to me is a very big sign.
Yeah.
Multiple holidays in a year together. You've stayed over at my house every week for the last year because she used to work near my apartment. And I was like, wait, so were you staying over because it was convenient? Rather than and this is where you're saying why would you think you were invited to my hen?
But that's why I'd be shocked because I have invited my closest friends.
Right.
Yeah.
But also in now being the other person on the other side, I have legitimate evidence of why I thought I was at that level.
100%.
And the likelihood is she had 20 friends who she also went on holiday with, who she also stayed over at their house. And to me, you staying over at my house is honestly like you are in my top 3 of my life.
Yeah, agree.
Like you being in my safe space, in my home. But this is what I mean. The definition of friendship is so great.
So
and
true.
to her, it could just be, well, my office is right by your house. Of course I stayed over. And in my head, I'm like, okay, but you slept in my bed. Do you know what I mean? And this is where it's so mismatched.
Sure. If someone came to me and said, why wasn't I invited to your hen and they stayed at my house and I saw them once a week and I saw them even once a month, I would think it's fair. But I don't really see my friends once a month either. So it would be a shock to me also if I didn't invite them that would make me really, really close to them, by the way.
So that's the one time I've been upset not being included
I think
on
that's
a hen.
100% valid. Did you speak to her about it?
Yeah, it ended in a friendship breakup. The night before, the night after my romantic breakup.
It's really interesting. It's really shocking, by the way, that happened. But what's really interesting to me as well is the fact that some people are so afraid to have that conversation that the only thing that they can do is cut it out. Now, I have a real issue with this because what I really love that you said in the book and what we are 100% aligned on is if you are an avoider of conflict, you are an avoider of communication.
Yes.
I believe conflict is a very healthy, a very good, a very normal thing to do, except in life, as women, we've been told that we're too difficult and too out there and ask for too much and so emotional if we raise up a conflict. Now, one thing I really want to talk to you about is how on earth do I break up with a friend when they are passive aggressive, they haven't done anything directly to me, but I just do not really want to be mates with them.
Yeah.
But we are part of a big circle group. How do I stop being friends with them?
So going back to the thing you said around being avoidant, to add to that story, I actually don't like hen parties either. And so I didn't really care to be invited.
Right.
I was hurt by it though, because she had spent 8 months ignoring me. Because she didn't want to tell me. And I found out via a friend I wasn't invited. So actually, when I communicated that, I was like, look, I don't really like hen parties, so I'm all good. What I was upset by is that you avoided it for 8 months and therefore we didn't see each other for 8 months. And also, I found out through someone else. Why couldn't you have just told me directly? And this is where I do think, to answer your question, it's about direct communication.
100%.
And even if it's around passive aggressive things, you can use other language where you're like, to be honest, passive aggressive comments can actually be called out. You mentioned one earlier where you were like, someone was like, oh, all right for some. That's something that people say very passive aggressively. I can actually call out passive aggressive language by saying something like, ouch, that really hurt. I know it's all right for some. I know I'm very lucky and I'm very fortunate to be in this position, to be able to go on holiday multiple times a year. And also, it's really hurtful that as a friend of mine, you're cutting down my accomplishment and my win and my holiday that I'm really excited about. And so I would bring it up. And yes, the mutual friends adds a complicated element because you're worried that people are going to take sides. And they do. And what I tend to do is I go to the mutual friends and go like, hey, look, me and Samantha had a falling out. I get it. You're all in an awkward position. You're all in the middle. On my side, I'm not going to ask you to pick between us. If you want to invite both of us to an event, since it's fresh and I don't particularly want to see Samantha right now, I'm okay to be the one to opt out. I'm going to miss you and it's going to suck, but can we do something separately? Let's say it's a birthday party and I'll be like, look, I don't want it to be awkward between me and Samantha. I can only control my behavior. I'm not going to start a fight at your birthday. And at the same time, I don't want to particularly see her. And I still love you and I care about you. And I don't want you to have to mediate between us. So can we just do something different to celebrate your birthday? I would love to take you out for lunch. And hopefully the issues between me and Samantha, like over time, we'll be able to be in the same room and we'll be able to be civil. But I just don't want there to be a falling out and something that takes away from the attention that you deserve on your birthday. That's how I'd have the conversation.
I mean, it's really interesting because I do think that having that conversation can feel so awkward and uncomfortable, but it's also about being honest and transparent rather than letting those feelings build up.
And also let the events unfold. Because what's worse going to happen is you don't tell anyone what's going on. They have no clue you and Samantha have fallen out. So turn up. Samantha's off on one, yelling at, screaming you at this birthday party. And the birthday girl sat there going like, when the hell did this happen and why did no one tell me? And now my birthday is ruined. Like, I'm now trying to fix this thing between you. When actually, like, is it painful to be the person to opt out? Yes, but I would much rather be the person to opt out. Like, because I could go into a tit for tat for like, why should I be the one to pull out? Why can't Samantha pull out? Like, but I go into the position of like, no, be ultimately selfless here. Focus on the birthday girl. It is her birthday. It is not like, don't make it about your stuff. And ultimately the consequence of a friendship breakup is that there is going to be a person left out. Look, I'm big enough to be able to like, be like, look, it's going to suck on the day and I'm going to hate seeing the photos from it. And it's a side effect. And us being in the same room at the same time, like likelihood is if the friendship breakup is very raw and very fresh, I don't really want to be in that room either. And I will miss my other friends and I will miss the fact that I can't celebrate your birthday that day, but I can celebrate your birthday in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, honestly, I actually really love this book and I hope that I changed your mind and you changed my mind on a few things. But, you know, you said that this book isn't about telling you how to be a good friend. And I actually think you're wrong on that. I think it does teach you how to be a good friend because it teaches you to really understand a different perspective. It helps you to see your blind spots. I mean, throughout this conversation, you've shown me so many of my blind spots. And I really actually enjoyed debating it with you because that's what I think we need to do more of. We need to have more of these nuanced conversations. We need to have more of these brave conversations. And you are welcome back anytime to debate with me.
Thank you. I mean, I think the side effect of being more self-aware around your beliefs and your values and your thought patterns around friendship is you do become a better friend because 100%. At least if you're doing something, you know why you're doing something.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that has been a unintended side effect and I always love chatting with you.
Thank you so much.